How we feeling, Brad?
Feeling pretty good, a little nervous.
This is our specialty. What are you talking about, nervous? This is where we dominate.
Yeah.
This is where we do our best work.
Is it?
Something like that. Let's get him. Alright guys, tension's always high when we are stepping into the stream room at the Lodge Card Club here in Round Rock, Texas. These are serious games here. This is 25, 50, 100. You know, we're gonna be splashing around. There's gonna be a stand-up game and all that stuff, but the money is no laughing matter here. I'm gonna buy in for, I believe, $15,000. I'm not sure if that's gonna be enough really to start with though, because I imagine the double and triple straddle and all that madness will be in effect. So might need to top up to 20K right away and possibly even more. We'll see. Wish me luck. Some friendly faces, some familiar faces in there, but let's go. Let's go to battle.
Welcome to the Lodge live stream. My name's Slick Rick, along with my partner since show number 1, Skull Mike Skull. The boys are back in town.
The boys are indeed back in town for some casual stakes here, 25, 50, 100 with a 100 big blind ante. The one and only Doug Polk on my direct right, and on my left is a young Brad Owen. There will be a player in between us in a few hands, but for now he is on my direct left. So the three of us here at the table together in the beautiful Lodge live stream studio. Action underway here in hand number 1 off of the deck, and we see a raise from Alex. The under the gun spot makes $300 to go. Over to us on the dealer button, looking down at pocket 7s. If that initial raise came from a later position, say hijack or cutoff, definitely consider a 3-bet, but button versus under the gun, flat call I think makes a ton of sense. Action over to a man named Cough in the straddle spot, who decides to put in the squeeze up to $1,500. As mentioned, very casual stakes here. Alex gets out of the way pretty quickly, and over to us in the dealer button. How do we feel about this? Of course, we're in there and heads up to a flop. King, 3, deuce, rainbow, just one overcard to our 7s, which is good, but of course, not in love with that king on the board. Ace, king, king, queen, king, jack suited, all sorts of kings in my opponent's range. So when he c-bets for $1,500, we got a call, but as mentioned, not in love with it. Turn is the deuce of clubs, second club, and Cough continues firing here, this time for $2,000. Not a big bet, but with pocket 7s, it's just very difficult to improve if in fact we are behind. Sometimes my opponent will pick up equity in the form of a flush draw and will be ahead of that by a little bit, and other times we are just crushed. I just decided to let it go here. I have no idea how Cough plays. This is literally the first hand that I've ever played with him. I go ahead and fold, and as we can see, Cough getting out of line here in hand number 1 with the 10-6 of clubs, putting in the squeeze play, finds some additional equity on the turn, and that double barrel gets through. Nice hand, sir. All right, hand number 3. Once again, the player in the under the gun spot, raising it to $300. That player is Doug this time. Once again, we look down at another pocket pair, 2 pairs in 3 hands, pocket 8s, the snowies. This time, I'm making the call once again. And Brad on my left tosses in the call as well. So the 3 amigos going 3 ways to a flop that comes down 10-4-4 rainbow. Once again, just one overcard to our pair. This time I like it a little bit more, but it's 3 ways now. Doug puts out a c-bet. Pretty similar situation as the last hand. We're going to have to call at least 1 bet. And Brad calls as well behind me. Turn is the jack of clubs, second club, and another overcard to our 8s. So when Doug checks it this time, I'm going to check it, trying to get to showdown, but not sure how easily that's going to happen in a 3-way pot. Brad starts assembling a wager, and he puts out $1,600, I believe. Doug gets out of the way pretty quickly. We're going to have to get out of there as well. Seems unlikely that Brad is bluffing here, and sure enough, he shows the Jack 10, which is good for 3 pair. That beats 8s and 4s. Send that man the pot.
2 p.m. Central.
All right, up to hand number 11 now, and yet another pocket pair for me, this time the deuces in the under the gun spot. I raise it up to $300 before Cough calls on the dealer button, and action makes its way around to Doug in the straddle spot, and this time he wants to put in the squeeze play himself. Puts in a 3-bet up to $1,800. And it feels like I'm kind of due to flop a set. It hasn't happened in a while. It feels like here in the Lodge live stream. I don't want to go anywhere with my pocket deuces. I'm trying to win a big pot. I make the call and Koff gets out of the way on the dealer button. So heads up versus Doug Polk. One of the best in the world. What a great spot for me. Heads up to a flop that comes down. Not exactly in my favor. Ace, King 3, incredibly good flop for the 3-better. We see Doug put some chips out here. That's actually $250 tip for the dealer. It's not that he thinks or knows that he's going to win this hand. It's that each time the dealer sits down, we do a tip flop, and the first numerical card, which represents someone's seat, that person tips the dealer for the entire down. Doug finally gets around to actually c-betting his hand. This is not our board as mentioned. We're going to have to fold the deuces, and Doug shows us that it is his flop. Nails top 2 pair. Trying to make it work with these pocket pairs, but no luck so far for us.
100, 200.
All right, on to hand number 22 now, where action folds to me in the cutoff, looking down at 2 paint cards. King Jack offsuit, raise it up to $300, and Koff defends the straddle spot. So, heads up to a flop that comes down Ace, 9, 3, Rainbow. Ace high board's good for the initial raiser, but in this case, no connection once again. Could c-bet or could check it back and take a free card versus some smaller pairs, and that is what I decide to do. Turns another 3, pairs the bottom card. Koff checks it to me once again. Just going to check it back here, take a free card, try and improve versus some smaller pairs as mentioned. That doesn't happen as the ace pairs on the river. Board is double paired now, and we have king high, which will be good some percentage of the time. All sorts of suited connectors, queen highs, 10 highs, jack highs. Lots of stuff that's going to feel incentivized to bluff rivers. So when Koff does in fact put out a bet, I think you can flip a coin here. It's unlikely he's going to have an ace. It's unlikely he's going to have a 3. Is he going to go for value with a hand like pocket 5s? Not too sure about that. But obviously king high is going to lose to some hands as well. So I decided to let the curiosity win this time, as it often does. Toss out the call, and we get shown a better 2-pair than that 2-pair that is on board. Koff puts in a good value bet with his 9s and aces. King high no good this time, and we have yet to win a hand in this session. All right, hand number 34 of the show here, and once again, another pocket pair. 10s this time. We are in the straddle spot, and Yu-chan has the double straddle on. 25, 50, 100, 100 with a 200 double straddle on. I raise it up to $600, and Yu-chan defends in position. 998 with 2 hearts. Of course, we don't hate this flop because there's no overcards to the 10s. We could definitely get value from 8x and flush draws and straight draws and stuff. These 10s are pretty vulnerable on this board, so you could make an argument for either c-betting and denying equity versus a host of hands, or putting in some checks, because I think Yu-chan might have more 9s in a raised pot, blind versus blind, than I, although it's probably pretty close. So it could go either way, and I decide to check it. Yu-chan puts out a bet, and I, of course, am going nowhere. I make the call. Turns to deuce of hearts, 3rd heart. I check it, and this time he checks it back. River's a queen, which is an overcard to our 10s. I don't think I have to worry about Jack 10 because we double blocked that hand. So once again, it's probably pretty close between a check or putting out a small blocker-ish type bet. I decide on the latter. I put out a bet. I make it $700 to get to showdown here. We can get value sometimes versus an 8, maybe some smaller pairs, 3s through 7s, possibly a non-believing ace high. If we get raised, it's going to be a pretty tricky spot here, but it does not come to that. Yu-chan tosses out the call, we roll it over, and it is good. Turns out Yu-chan had a pair of deuces, was bluffing on the flop, made a pair on the turn. We get a little bit of value here, and I believe this is the first hand that we've won all day. All right, hand 36 folds all the way to me in the small blind, looking down at queen 5 of diamonds. We're out of position versus a couple of players here, but definitely some decent value if you can manage to steal the blinds. So I'm going to go ahead and put in a raise here with my queen 5 before action gets over to Brad. Looking down at his signature hand, he is going to put in the 3-bet. We're out of there very quickly. Queen 5 adventure, maybe a little bit too adventurous.
I mean, was it like the demeanor?
Just a few hands later, this time we are in the hijack spot, and that double straddle is on once again. These are no small stakes, 25, 50, 1, 1, and 200. I make it $500 to go out of the hijack with the king, queen off suit. Alex is in the first straddle, he makes the call, and Terrace makes the call in the double straddle. So 3 ways to a flop that comes down. Queen 10 for Rainbow. giving us top pair, strong kicker. Two guys check it to me. Of course, we're c-betting here. Bet about 1/3 size of the pots. And this time, we face no resistance, which always feels good, especially when you're stuck, and especially playing these stakes. Any pot is significant, and especially versus a couple of maniacs who make their home in Texas.
Do you know where 2222 is?
Yeah, I live in Tarrytown.
Well,
All right, double straddle still on in this hand. Yuchan puts that $200 out, and action starts
Broadway
with
cards out of the
Terrace
small blind.
coming in for the raise from the small blind.
And Terrace
I like down
is
at
back
8-5
on
of
his
clubs.
horse.
We got position versus Terrace, an extremely affable guy, loves to party, loves to get in the middle of these pots. I want to play a pot with him.
Andrew,
I'm in.
you're getting yourself into some trouble, Andrew. You want some trouble, huh?
It's an adventure. Yeah, I'm looking for a little.
All right. Awesome.
Yuchan makes the call in the double straddle, and we go 3 ways to a flop. King 8-4 with 2 diamonds gives us middle pair with a crappy kicker. Not too much to be proud of, but when Terrace puts out a c-bet of $800, we're going to have to stick around with our pair. Tough to make a pair. Yuchan must not have one. He gets out of the way. Heads up to a turn card against Terrace, which comes down another king. That is one of the few turn cards that we really do enjoy seeing because it makes it a little bit more likely that our pair of 8s is good. Terrace grabs some chips, assembles another wager, and decides on the same size wager as previous streets. Bets out for $800 again. Don't think there's too much point in raising here. Obviously not folding for that price. That leaves one option left. Toss in a yellow chip and get $200 back. Off to a river card, which is a jack, which puts up another overcard to our pair. So not loving that so much. But when Terrace puts out another wager of yet again another $800, that is a cheap price.
Needs to be much larger than that if you want Andrew to fold.
Not full for $800.
Snap.
Okay, you win.
There's the smile from Andrew.
A little bit more.
Yeah, a little more.
All right, in this hand, action starts with Terrace in the cutoff coming in for the raise up to $500. Doug puts in the 3-bet. He's on the dealer button. He makes it $2,000 to go. And we look down at the King Jack of clubs in the small blinds, which is an interesting spot. I think Doug is going to have a pretty wide 3-bet range here versus Terrace. I think he wants to play some pots in position versus him and fold out the other players. So he doesn't need to have a premium here. He will be pretty well balanced. Doug very capable of finding lots of bluffs. So I don't think we want a cold call necessarily. I think putting in the 4-bet, which gives us some fold equity as well as uncaps our range with these suited Broadway hands, that feels like a pretty good play. So I'm going to go ahead, put in the 4-bet bluff here. I make it $4,800 to go. To my surprise, Easy puts in the cold call in the double straddle spot before action back over to Terrace, who is the initial raiser. He lets it go. As we can see, he had 7-deuce offsuit, good fold Terrace, and we can see Doug getting in the mix with the ace-5 offsuit. So our 4-bet works versus the 2 initial raisers. However, we have a straggler in the form of Easy behind me putting in that cold call, and we go heads up to a flop that comes down queen, queen, queen. A very interesting board here. I think I am typically going to have all the strongest hands. Maybe it's pretty close as to who's going to have that final queen, but I'm likely to have aces. I have a king, which blocks pocket kings. I have a jack, which blocks pocket jacks. I think Easy is going to be paired up here a lot of the time, but like I said, I think I'm going to have the strongest pocket pairs in my range more often. So I'm going to start with a wager here on the flop, and it doesn't need to be big because this board is pretty much locked down, and it's a 4-bet pot. So with those 2 factors in place, I'm going to put out a c-bet and make it small. I bet $2,200, which is somewhere around 1/6 the size of the pot. Easy doesn't think for too long and makes the call, which I would expect him to do with pretty much all of his pocket pairs. If we want to try and fold out those middling to good pocket pairs, we're going to have to keep our foot on the gas. The 7 won't change anything, and I think it's time to apply pressure in the form of another barrel. Once again, don't need to go too big because if I had the goods, say I had a queen or say I had pocket aces, we want to bet the same amount that would go for value with those hands. I decided on a sizing of $3,800, and once again, Easy doesn't think for too long before sliding out the call. Once again, on the river, that shouldn't change anything. The only card that would really change anything would be an ace or maybe a king, or perhaps the last queen. 10, that's a brick essentially. We aren't super deep stacked at this point. We've got ourselves a little over $10,000, but if we're gonna tell this story, if we're gonna put maximum pressure on, we're gonna have to unload the clip here. I decide to go ahead and rip it all in for this small 5-figure amount of money. And Very bad news is that Easy thinks about it for no time whatsoever before making the call, which does not mean that he has the quads, but essentially means he has the next best thing, which is pocket kings. Puts in the cold call of the 4-bet pre-flop, and I think I didn't give him enough credit for strong enough hand in that kind of a spot. Pocket 8s, 9s, 10s, something like that. A full house, but not a nutted full house, but with the pocket kings, that makes a lot of sense as to why he called down here and he wins the maximum. Nice hand, Easy. That, unfortunately, is going to put us well into Stuckville in this session, and we've got our work cut out for us now. Poker waits for no man. Feels not great to be stuck tens of thousands of dollars, but that is the reality of the situation. And in hand number 66, action continues. Doug comes in for the raise after it folds to him in the big blind. We look down at Queen 10 of spades. Could 3-bet or we could flat call. I decide to put in the call, and Yu-chan calls behind me. 3 ways to a flop of 9-5-3 rainbow gives us 2 overcards plus 2 backdoors. When Doug checks, we could bet here. Queen high probably not going to win at showdown, but 3 ways, multi-way, I'm going to just play somewhat straightforward here, especially not being in last position. I check in action, checks all the way through. 3 ways to a turn card, which is the 8 of hearts, second heart, which gives us a gut shot straight draw plus those 2 overcards. So when Doug checks, and nobody's showing any interest in this pot yet, I could have some of these middling cards, I think. Why not? I'm going to go ahead and put out a bet. It's a $1,200 semi-bluff on my part, trying to make something good happen in this session, but pretty immediately we get absolutely slapped across the face because Yu-chan puts in the raise here on this card. Doug is out of the way pretty quickly, and there's not too much we can do here. We can't call with our gut shot, especially with 2 hearts. If it was a spade, then of course we would consider it and probably call. But in this spot, we're going to have to fold. As we can see, we folded the best hand because Yu-chan makes a great play here with his gut shot himself, blocking the nuts currently. Love this play from him. As mentioned, he's a fantastic player. Gets one over on us in this spot, as seems to be happening every single spot in this session. Feels bad, man. $32,000 in the red. Not fun. More poker to come here as Easy comes in for the raise off of the button, up to $1,200. I think we must have had a $400 straddle on in this hand because that is a huge raise. So 25, 50, 100, 200, 400 in this hand. Easy in with the raise. Terrace comes in with the re-raise. Just your average $5,000 3-bet before we look down at a premium holding ace king suited, which is a welcome sight. Stuck piles, 3-bet, who knows how many straddles out there. That leaves us one move. We are shipping all in here for $22,000. We want to see all 5 cards here. If we do happen to get called, not going to play this one tricky, not going to raise some small amount. It's the maximum, 22K. Action back over to Terrace, who does not snap call, of course, which is great, which means he's got himself a speculative hand. Now it's just up to Terrace to decide how much exactly he wants to speculate.
Those hands.
I'm gonna I can flip over my hand, like king, queen, offsuit. Is that any good? What do you have, like 10s, jacks, 9s maybe, 8s? Ace king? I mean, ace king has me, aces, kings, queens. I mean, do you want to gamble or not? I mean, whatever happens, I'm going to have to request more money. I mean, if I lose, I'm getting more money.
Terrace eventually finds the call, decides he doesn't need this 17K. It's not going to be the worst call a lot of the times. I'm going to do the same thing with a bunch of pocket pairs. With the amount of action that I've seen on this table, I'm going to stick it in there with, I don't know, 8s, 9s, 10s, jacks. Lots of pairs where it's going to be a flipping situation. This time is not the case, though. We are in very good shape. However, we of course do not have a lock on this hand. We are off to the races, and if I lose this hand, we are going to be stuck astronomical.
No queen.
Terrace needs a red queen.
Jack. Oh.
Now he picks up some outs. A queen or a 10 does not come. And Andrew Neeme will get the full double up.
Not my day at all.
A well-deserved double up.
It's not hitting it at all. Like, I can't hit it. I mean,
Andrew.
it was what, like 75-25 roughly?
And Terrace In the middle of that hand, called for another 50,000 to be delivered to the stream table.
Salvation in this spot. We get a good spot with ace king versus king queen all in pre-flop in a casual $46,000 pot. One of the largest ones that I've played in my poker career. And thankfully, running it once works out for us. We find the full double up to get a little bit or significantly less stuck. When you're stuck 32K at one point, it feels pretty good to only be stuck 4 figures. There's more poker to be played. Today's session of insanity continues. Doug has left the table. He's got family obligations. He is replaced by the llama on my direct right. In this hand, Alex is first to open from the cutoff over a $200 straddle. Comes in for the $600 raise. Action folds over to me in the small blind looking down at ace 10 offsuit. We can fold this hand, or we can take an aggressive route once in a while. I decided to take that aggressive route this time and put in the 3-bet up to $2,500. Other players get out of the way and it's back to Alex, who thinks it over, gives me that death stare before sliding out the call. Heads up to a flop that comes down king, queen, 5, rainbow, which is a pretty welcome sight for me. Definitely a good board for my range, and especially so holding an ace and a 10, which will have good removal to all the strongest hands. We also have reasonable equity in the form of a gut shot plus 1 overcard, so all that adds up to a c-bet from me, $1,400. Alex does his thing. Very calculating player, very strong player. Gives me those death stares before deciding to put more money into this pot. $1,400 not enough. He decides $3,500 is the correct amount. Obviously don't love to see that, but we can't go anywhere just yet. We've got a gut shot to the nuts and gonna have to continue. Turn is a second king, second club, which is pretty interesting. I should have most of the strongest hands on this board, but Alex has the betting lead, so I decided to check it over to him. Alex thinks it over for a while before now deciding to check back here on the turn. River is the 10 of clubs, third club, which gives us 2 pair here, ace kicker. Check it over to Alex once again. I'll be very happy to somehow get to showdown here. Not exactly sure what to do if we face a bet on the river. All options will be on the table, but after some deliberation, it does not come to that. Alex decides to check it back. I announce my hand, and Alex lets it go. So this was a pretty interesting hand. I wasn't exactly sure what was going on. He said it was a poor run out for him, and it turns out he had pocket sixes, which just applies maximum pressure, somehow knows, or at least has some inkling that that's the best hand on the flop. Maybe those death stares have something to him. Not exactly sure how deep he can see into my soul, but it feels pretty deep. It feels real deep. Anyway, he slides it into the muck, and we are very happy to win this pot. A 3-bet pot, which saw a raise on the flop.
Subscribers were at 104.
Hand number 111. We are several hours into the live stream by this point. I'm going to raise this one up. I got myself a suited king in the +1 spot. I make it $500 to go over a $200 straddle, and the llama defends that $200 straddle. Heads up to a flop of 9, 6, 5 with 2 hearts. Not exactly a great board for my range, but it's not like I'll never connect with this board. I could have plenty of suited connectors. I could also have some over pairs that will want to fire as well for protection. I go ahead and put out a smallish c-bet. I bet $500. And the llama thinks about it for a little bit before making the call. Turn is a super brick, offsuit, deuce, and the llama checks it over to me again. We've got a blocker to the straight. Not going to win with king high here. Got some equity. Don't want to just give up here. I'm going to fire a second barrel here. $1,500 is the wager. Llama thinks about it for a little while before saying, "All right, sir," and lets it go, which feels good to get this one through with king 8. Turns out, of course, Llama folded a better hand, which is not difficult to do, versus the king 8. Can't blame him though, he just had a gut shot himself and ace high, so we get this one through. A few victories late in the session, very much needed victories. And that is going to be the final interesting hand for me in this session of high stakes poker. Those victories towards the end are not going to be enough to get all the way unstuck, but it is significantly less stuck than we were at the maximum. I'm actually slightly more stuck than these graphics would suggest. I added an additional 1,000 that didn't make its way into the tallies. So we lose a little bit more than this, which is not great. Not exactly the direction or the finish that we were looking for, but about 2/3 of the way there from the lowest point of the day.
Wrapping up the session here at the Brass Tap, which is easily one of, if not my favorite spots here in downtown Round Rock for beers, for food, for chill vibes, for post-stream session wrap-ups. Hanging out here with Bradley Owen, Skull Mike, and the maestro, Matt Sweeney. It didn't really go my way today, mostly because I was incredibly card dead throughout the entire session. I did blast it off in that one spot, 3 streets worth of firing right into Pocket Kings of easy. I don't really hate the spot too much, but you know, just kind of ran into it and did not have much of anything throughout the rest of the session. I think 1 pair was my strongest hand class throughout the entire session. So usually when that's the case in Texas, things are not going to go great. Yeah, so I got into this game for tens of thousands of dollars and end up losing $12,700 in this session. So gonna be back to battle here tomorrow immediately. Brad won. So anyway, it's a wrap from Round Rock tonight. A wrap from Austin. Back to battle tomorrow, almost certainly.
Don't put that in there.
No, I cut that out. Don't worry. I cut out what you said. And more action to come for sure.